National Puerto Rican Bar Association, established to meet the question on a national basis, what is Puerto Rico? A nation, a state, or something in between? Join the conversation every week right here.
Welcome, everybody. I am Anthony Suarez. I am chairman of the National Puerto Rican Bar Association Conference and host of this Equal Justice podcast dedicated to talk about Puerto Rico and the issues that affect Puerto Ricans and by that way also all Americans, because what affects one American affects all Americans, right? And with
Yes,
me,
sir.
Steve Alcina, my
Good
co-host.
morning.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Steve, once again to discuss with us the issues and spend some of time trying to educate the people who are listening to us. So today's topic, okay, what are we going to be talking about? Oh my God, why not? We're going to be talking not that one. Oh, we're going to be talking this one? No, this one. That one is the one.
Supreme.
Okay, the Supremes. We're going to be talking about what the Supremes want and what they are talking about, because yesterday we discussed it a bit on the other podcast, had to do with divine justice. The question of birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment that was discussed and has been the topic of discussion since Donald Trump came into power. We may recall that one of his first executive orders was to say, as the executive, all the executive agencies, federal agencies, immigration, all of them work for him, right? And
Yes.
so he signed an executive order that would limit the federal government agencies from recognizing people who were born in the United States but whose parents were not American citizens. That is not how the law has been interpreted in the United States. And as a result, people started suing, right? The result was, I don't want to get too technical, but bottom line, he sued. His first round, the first judge in that case decided that it's a federal issue. I'm going to stop the federal government nationwide from doing any action against these people. Trump won that when he went up to the Supreme Court, he won that but not on the issue of what was birthright, not on the definition of who can be a citizen. He won it on whether or not one judge in one district can stop a whole country based on an order to stop. So the Supreme Court ruled that one judge cannot stop the entire federal government from state to state with a order mandatory that would cross across the entire United States.
Exactly.
So it went back. So then all the people who were being affected by this had to bring individual cases in different states. So the lawyers got organized, and then they started bringing lawsuits all over the country. There are about 30 pending lawsuits from individual states and individual cases. And so that case, Trump versus Barbara, is the case that was ultimately decided by the United States Supreme Court, which defined not whether or not a judge had the power to have national injunction, but whether or not the person could be denied citizenship if their parents weren't citizens. So that was the question. The Supreme Court, as we probably, those of you who are listening, listening to us now, are probably people who are interested in this kind of stuff. So, you have the court decided that if you were born in the United States, that's it. You were born in the United States, you become a citizen. It doesn't make a difference the status of your parents. So now, from a political point of view, people say, "Oh, people are coming here and having birth babies. They're coming over and just giving birth, or they call them anchor babies. Or they come here and then they go back to their country, and then they indoctrinate them with anti-American ideas. Then they're still American citizens, and they can come back. There's all sorts of reasons from a political point of view that you might not like that decision, but they're not legal arguments. They're just political arguments.
Or speculations, right?
Right.
We don't have proof.
Yeah. So we have the birthright citizenship decided. By the way, it was decided 5-4. That means it was close. There were 4 judges who believed that it was possible, even if not possible by executive order, because Trump did this with executive order, didn't go through Congress. But there were some judges who said, well, if you had gone through Congress, maybe you could have changed the definition of what is born. Most people, including myself, scholars will say, no, if it's a constitutional interpretation, only a constitutional amendment will fix the problem that you want to fix. That is to change who becomes the definition of a citizen, right? So now in the backdrop of that, you have a 5-4 decision, sort of nebulous as to whether people born here. Now we know 5-4 still means the law is if you're born here, you are you're a citizen, no matter what the status of your parent.
Exactly.
But let's look at the question of Puerto Rico. All right, because the problem with that is, Steve, is that Puerto Rico has a different situation. Puerto Rico, say again?
No. I was going to ask you. Let's say, for hearsay speculation, that he were to pass that law. How will that affect Puerto Rico as a colony?
Well, they're going to affect right now because Puerto Rico is in fact a territory of the United States and not part of the United States, and this goes back to cases back in 1800s when they said Puerto Rico was an unincorporated territory of the United States, and therefore, because it's that they're not governed with the same way as other states. They're governed under the territorial clause, which means Congress can do whatever Congress wants with Puerto Rico. And trade it away, give it to Denmark, and trade it. They can take away citizenship. And here is where I wanted to get back. Because Puerto Rico's citizenship comes not under the 14th Amendment, as was the birthright case. Puerto Rico's right to citizenship comes under something called the Jones Act, which was passed in March of 1917. In March of 1917, the Jones-Shepard Act was passed by Congress that said that all people born on the island are American citizens, right? And so that established the Bill of Rights for Puerto Ricans and allowed Puerto Ricans to vote in local elections. Now, my position is, and I think some people may have some difference, but I'm pretty sure that most scholarship will say, what one Congress does, another Congress can change. So this is not a constitutional right of citizenship to Puerto Ricans. Puerto Ricans have a statutory right to citizenship. And not talking about those born on the island, right? Yes. Now, once you have citizenship, I do not believe that the federal government will be able to take away from you just because by statute. They're going to have to provide a process like taking away citizenship. Once you're a citizen, they'd have to find you guilty of treason and something like that. But it does say to me that if tomorrow's Congress is full of other Trumpsters, then they can vote to do away with the Jones Act and say people in Puerto Rico are just Puerto Rican citizens, like in Guam or the American Samoa. Not nationals, they call them nationals, and therefore not American citizens. That is possible because Puerto Rico is governed as a territory, as was indicated by Sanchez Valle cases and other cases that have been going before the United States Supreme Court. Clearly, the case of Trump versus Barbara deciding on birthright citizenship for everyone else happened to be born on the land of the United States makes it that close that you could almost get kicked out, right? Even if you're born here. And now you have this question about what can they do about Puerto Rico in the future? All right. So now that's how I'm posing this argument here for today, Steve. That I want people to understand why is it that we have this moot court competition and why the National Puerto Rican Bar Association Conference even exists. And so I want to state it clear. Puerto Ricans on the island have a citizenship that's statutory, not constitutional. That means they are subject to being taken away, though that citizenship. That's one. Two, because Puerto Rico is under the territorial clause, the Supreme Court has said Puerto Rico has no sovereignty. Whatever the United States wants to do with it, the United States Congress wants to do it, they can. So they can limit their rights. They can do whatever they want. In fact, as of today, you know how Puerto Rico has a board that's controlling their budget, and it's run by people appointed by Congress.
Yeah.
Not appointed by the governor, not appointed by the people of Puerto Rico or elected by the people of Puerto Rico. The budget of Puerto Rico is run by Congress through the Promesa Board. So Puerto Rico has no sovereignty. And it seems to me, as a lawyer, as an American, as a professor, that it is improper for a nation like us to have a colony, which is what Puerto Rico is. Now, that's what clearly the Supreme Court has indicated that Puerto Rico is a colony. It's a territory governed in a territorial clause. The right of citizenship comes from statutory, not from birthright. And so Puerto Ricans are in a very tenuous position. Of course, being of Puerto Rican heritage, that concerns me. It's always been concerning me. And so I want to say to all the people, and I led these events here in Tallahassee when I was a state legislator. That's the picture of us in Tallahassee for Puerto Rico Day, and the community of Puerto Rico being very enthusiastic about both the citizenship and their involvement in the United States. This is a precarious position to be in. Now, what we're trying to do with moot court, all right, and I want to change the banner here so that people can see what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
Just go to that website, and on that website, you're going to get the information about what the National Puerto Rican Bar Association Conference is all about. It's an attempt to gather the lawyers from the main 4 jurisdictions where we have more Puerto Rican lawyers. They're more all over the place, and hopefully we'll be able to organize them in Texas, for example, California. But at least in Illinois, Florida, New York, and Puerto Rico, we're together and trying to bring a conference where we can meet each other, discuss each other, networking with each other, and conduct the moot court competition. And the moot court competition is about it's about bringing law schools from around the country, and we already had commitments from Illinois, right, and New York, as well as, of course, Florida. Schools that will send teams of young lawyers to argue a case in a court before judges, and they will argue the case that we put for them about Puerto Rico equality, and then they have to argue for the plaintiff or for the respondent. Now, Steve, that doesn't mean they win a case or that this is real.
No, of course.
Right? But what it does do is hopefully will provide young lawyers from all over the country, eventually, as this grows and continues, all right?
Nationwide.
They will learn about Puerto Rico, which no one learns about Puerto Rico while they're in law school.
No, yeah.
So we will develop a cadre of lawyers that would someday become legislators. Someday they'll become judges in their states, and they'll say, I know about this situation in Puerto Rico, and we must address it. So I think that I have brought forth to you the reason, right, for why the Bar Association Conference exists, the problem with the Puerto Rican citizenship, the problem with the birthright citizenship, and I'm hoping that people listen to me. Now, I've already spoken for 15 minutes of just bringing the problem up. I'd like to be able to entertain some questions, Steve. So I don't know if the people are live. I'm not in control of that thing, but you are my voice of the people. and I was wondering if you had any questions for me as to what I'm doing.
Oh, well, I got lots of questions. Let me ask you a question. Um, I know that you have already included Chicago and Florida. What was the other state? New York.
Right.
Okay. And the idea or the good idea would be to try to expand this nationwide to create, okay, that hunger for those people who love Puerto Rico and that would like to go ahead and fix the problem. But you got another situation. There's a lot of people on the island that do not want to fix the problem. They
Right.
do not care. Okay. If their state, if they're comfortable where they're at.
Right.
But you brought something that is very important that a lot of those comfortable people don't know. And it is that if the United States decided to drop the ball, okay,
Right.
that comfortability goes away. And then what? So now what we have to do is create that conscience, letting them know that, hey, listen, you know what? Politics are very unstable. We don't know what's going to happen. And perfect example what we're living today, day by day. Okay, so any day can happen where the government, okay, say, you know what, we are going to go ahead and let Puerto Rico go, and we're going to send them a bill for what they owe us, and we don't want no more business with you.
Right.
So what happens to the Puerto Rican people then?
Right.
Okay, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a huge problem.
Yep.
I believe.
Yep. Absolutely.
Within the government and within the population. So the moot court prepares those young, ambitious students that are going to law school to become attorneys, to, like you said, become legislators, and representatives. And I think that is crucial. We need to, because what the territorial law, explain that to me in layman's term, Tony.
Right.
Because in the school of law, they don't teach you that.
Right.
So can you go a little bit into that?
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. Because what the Constitution, remember when we applied the Constitution, when it was created by the 13 states that were colonies, and they got together, they formed the United States, and they formed this new United States.
Yes.
United States, so that it applies to the states. So the Constitution applies to the states in the structure of the relationship between the federal government and the states.
Okay.
Because Puerto Rico is not a state. The application of the Constitution to Puerto Rico, like every other state, is not the same. Which is why Puerto Rico, for example, when they had to bankruptcy, they couldn't apply for bankruptcy, which allows a state, the federal law allows a state to go into bankruptcy. But because Puerto Rico is not a state, they couldn't go into bankruptcy. Okay. And so they had to appoint an outside federal panel created by the federal government in order to try to get Puerto Rico to restructure its debt. So what the Supreme Court has said, that this Constitution, because Puerto Rico is not sovereign, Puerto Rico cannot do its own thing like a state.
Mm-hmm.
It is governed under another section of the Constitution, and that section is the territorial clause. And the territorial clause of the Constitution, let me see if I can pull it out for you right here. The territorial clause talks about Congress having the right to determine what happens in the territories. Remember, at that time, you had the 13 colonies, right? Then you had all this territory. They went after the Alleghenies up to the Mississippi River. You had all that territory there. It was called the Louisiana area. That was French territory and all that stuff. But you had all this territory beyond the 13 colonies, behind the 13 states. And all that territory, there were Indians in there, right? American natives on that. That area is called territories, and it's governed by Congress. Congress controls what happens in the territories. And that's when we talk about the territorial clause, that's what we mean.
So, in other words, is what we've been talking about. Congress has control of the island of Puerto Rico and what it decides for
Right.
them. Puerto Rico don't have any say, any nothing. All they have is their local laws, and that's about it. Which is pretty bad because, like you were saying, if the United States decides to tell Puerto Rico, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
We don't need you no more. We don't want to sponsor you no more. We don't want you to be our colony. You owe us X amount of billions to trillions of dollars. I'm going to pass you the bill. You on your own. How is Puerto Rico going to pay back the United States? No clue. How is Puerto Rico going to maintain itself when everything that Puerto Rico had was taken away? We go into another. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a complete disaster.
Yep. And so, but that's where we're at right now. I'm looking for the territorial clause within the Constitution. It's Article 1. Here I'm provided right here.
So when you look for that, let me just go ahead and say this. I believe in my heart, okay, that passing, okay, and trying to get as many bar associations throughout the states included into this mock court, I think it would be great. And you can talk about the Puerto Rican situation, but I'm pretty sure there's plenty of subjects that we can go and lean on. But specifically in this case, if we were to expand or try to expand to the point where we can have it nationwide, I think then and only then we'll be able to maybe come to an agreement where if there is a separation, okay, the Puerto Rican people are not left in such a bad condition, because then we will be able to negotiate a deal, okay, not a Trump deal, a good deal. Sorry. But you follow me. Maybe we'll be able to negotiate something better for the Puerto Rican people and the people that are living in the island at that point. Because for us to even go to that point, we need to nationwide get congressmen and people to be able to put motions on the floor to allow Puerto Rico to elect their own government. Because right now it's just okay. They have their elections. You vote for Populare, popular, or you vote for the Partido Nuevo Progresista, which is the Progressive Party, which is state or Commonwealth, which is basically what it boils down to. Then you have the independents, which are the three parties that Puerto Rico has. The independent party apparently has grown throughout the years a lot more than what it was maybe 30, 40 years ago. So there is a little bit more of independence. But the independence that the island has, they have, for what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is their format as to how they're going to run the government is totally different than what we've seen till now in Puerto Rico. In other words, they're throwing more to the left instead of to the right, and beyond the line of the left to maybe socialism or even communism. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was back in the day when what was his name? Slips my mind was there. But in the meantime, he wants independence from Puerto Rico, but he has a house here in Florida, $500,000. Anyway, Tony, go for it. Go for it.
No, there's so many contradictions. So, for example, I'll give you an example. I think I may have mentioned it the other day in one of the different podcasts, but Puerto Rico was allocated by Congress, right? It was allocated by Congress money for after Hurricane Maria.
Mm-hmm.
And the president who makes a determination, okay, Congress gave me $5 million for this, I'm going to spend it this way. unless Congress have very specific. Okay, I'm going to send so much for tractors, so much for water repairing the water system, or so much for electrical system. He's the executive, so he takes the money, then executes. Right now, Puerto Rico still has problem with the lighting system, right? The electrical system. They've been wanting to review, and they had money set aside for that. But then Trump put an executive order and told his agency that no Puerto Rican contract more than $100,000 can be approved without approval of the Department of Justice, Department of State.
Man.
So what that means that every little contract has to be approved. Meanwhile, he spent $14 million on the pool, right? On the reflection pool with a no bid contract. So see, that's just an example of how Puerto Rico can be treated unfairly. And they can't even sue. They really can't. They have no standing here because they're not sovereign. And whatever Congress wants to do can. And the president right now is at a point where he's actually doing whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
Not very much interested in the Constitution. That's why we have so many decisions going against some of his actions that he's doing, because of the fact that he's stretching the definitions of all these clauses in the Constitution and causing a problem for us. So, we have to keep the struggle. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Steve, yes, of course, this struggle is important to me because I'm of Puerto Rican heritage. Right? I was born and raised here, so I have no birthright problem. I have no statutory problem. It's just that as a lawyer, professor, and soldier, because I spent 14 years in the military, the Constitution is important to me, and I think fairness is important to me. And so, if people are not being treated fairly, and I have my family that's still on the island, right? And then culturally, I see that this island is being treated as a second-class citizen, then I have a problem with that. And I think that becomes a problem for the entire country. It's not just a Puerto Rican problem. It's a problem for everyone who believes that the Constitution should not allow that. And so that's why the struggle is still there. And that's not easy because, when you start getting generations down the line, they start looking themselves more like, hey, I'm from Idaho, than you looking, I'm from Puerto Rico, right? And so there becomes a cultural disconnect between the Puerto Ricans born in the mainland as opposed to Puerto Ricans on the island. Now, mind you, I say that, but my mother was also born in 1931 in New York. So, my father was born on the island, but my mother was born in New York. And her parents are from Puerto Rico. So I'm already second or third, depending how you count the generation, and still care very much about the island. But there are lots of people like me who care enough about Puerto Rico to make this a cause. And of course, I think there are a lot of non-Puerto Ricans who also care simply because it's a constitutional issue. And what is fair is fair.
Well spoken, my friend. But this is an issue that has been going on for years. And the answer for this is the status is not an issue. So we're going to move on to the next. And there's been, ¿cómo que se dice? ¿Cómo te dice? ¿Cómo la palabra? There's been, there's a word for it. You have said it many times, and I lost it, where they try to make the status go into issue. I don't remember the word. So
Plebiscite?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you. Plebiscito. Right. Plebiscite. Okay. Exactly. There's been hundreds of them. Okay. Right. And nothing accomplished.
Well, I can't say 100, but there's several. Okay.
Several.
And what happens is, again, Puerto Ricans have no power because it doesn't make it. 100% of the people from the island can vote for statehood, or 100% can vote for independence.
But you're not going to get it.
The only one that can do anything about it is Donald Trump when he sells Puerto Rico to Denmark, in exchange for Greenland. So there is no there's no power. The Puerto Ricans have no power over this. So that's why moot court is so important, because people in Montana, Idaho, Utah have more power over the future of Puerto Rico than do Puerto Ricans. And that's why you can have a million plebiscites. It doesn't make a difference. You have to have a constitutionally binding, a statutory that's binding on Congress once it passes. So Congress says, this is what we offer you, statehood or independence or whatever. This is what we offer Puerto Rico, yes or no. Okay? But you can't have Puerto Rico negotiating, voting, this is what we want, and then we'll go into Washington, because they ain't going to work that way.
Let me ask you a question. Do you really think the United States is going to let us go? You think they're going to let the island go when they're making billions and billions of dollars with the backs of the Puerto Ricans in the island?
Well, I'm waiting for my friends, my Republican friends, who've been who hinge their republicanism on the issue of Puerto Rico statehood. In Puerto Rico and the island, you had the statehood party, which has been traditionally aligned with the Republicans. Then you have the Populares, who've been traditionally aligned with the Democrats. That goes all the way back to Muñoz Marín, right? Mm-hmm. Muñoz Marín was a Democrat, and he started the Popular Party and the Popular Democratic Party, and
La Pava.
The question of La Pava and the question of the Commonwealth. Now, Puerto Rico, that's a loose association, because they are PNPs or Nuevo Progresistas, stateholders, who are Democrats. All right.
Yeah.
Now, the current governor, Jennifer Gonzalez, she is a Republican and a stateholder, but that's why she was close to Trump. I don't know how close she is now, but she did invite him down there. So now that's a loose association. Now, Trump has made it very clear that Puerto Rico is never going to have any kind of light of day, under his administration. The Republicans who control the Senate will not get this thing passed. So the question I have for them is your loyalty to the Republican Party because of the statehood issue, who you now clearly know they're not with you on that. Now, mind you, the Democratic Party has also been ambivalent. You have some people in the Democratic Party who want Puerto Rico to be a state, others that let it be whatever it is, others who want to keep it in the colonial status that it is in now. Yep. So when you have that kind of confusion, you have neither the Republicans nor the Democrats really wholehearted behind a clear option, because I think there are really only two clear options. Puerto Rico is going to be sovereign, or it's going to be a state with limited sovereignty, like other states do. So it's either going to be totally sovereign, or it's going to have part of the state. You have sovereignty on your state issues, but you give up your sovereignty on national issues, and you're subject to the Constitution like every other state. Those are really two options.
So in other words, what you're telling me is that 51 is not going to be Venezuela or Cuba, it's going to be Puerto Rico.
Say that again?
So you're telling me that state 51 is not going to be Venezuela or Cuba, it's going to be Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Or Canada, okay? Remember, Canada's was 51.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Canada was 51. Then it was Cuba. Now Venezuela.
He hasn't mentioned Puerto Rico. No. He don't like that. He don't like brown people.
I think we've covered this topic well, hopefully well. If you have any comments when you're watching this thing on YouTube and you'd like to have some comments, please write me a comment, and we could take this thing up. We will be working on the moot court competition, which is coming up in September. Okay, so the actual dates, I have to do a new banner. But the moot court will be September 18th, 19th. It's totally free for you to come and watch. Okay. The moot court competition is in Orlando, Florida. It is at the law school that I teach, Florida A&M College of Law, in downtown Orlando, Midtown, okay, right next to the Marriott, right next to the federal courthouse. And so for those of you who would like to watch this, you think this is of interest, and I think you'll find that it is of interest, they're having these young lawyers coming down, arguing about Puerto Rico, colonialism, It's going to be in the past. We've done 4 of these in the past, and I'm sure that you're going to enjoy it. It's free, so come on down, mark it in your calendar, and you can come on down for either a Friday or a Saturday or for both days if you'd like. Sit there and watch. Meet the other lawyers and meet the law students and integrate your organization. There are a lot of organizations on Facebook, Steve. You know, Puerto Rican organizations.
Yes.
On the mainland who promote their food and their cultural events and so forth. I would hope that someday that this conference becomes part of their conference. In other words, they're part of their effort, because what they're doing is important. You know, whether it's food, cultural, literary, whatever, is very important. But I think we're the only one that deals with the illegal issues. Yes. And there's no reason why we cannot join our efforts.
I agree.
So I'm looking forward to having people who hear us to join us, get an opportunity. I want to reiterate, none of the Puerto Rican bar associations take a position on what the status of Puerto Rico should be. Not one of them. All of us, no one says it should be a state. No one says it should be an independent country. No one even say they should have a free association. None.
No,
we are just bringing the issues forward for the people to know about this, because before you can make a decision, you have to have an informed decision. To be an informed decision, you have to have the facts. So I think it's important for people to learn. Our job is to continue to learn. This broadcast, Equal Justice, is about teaching people these issues. So today we're talking about the moot court, and we're talking about the birthright citizenship and the citizenship that came under the Jones Act for the Puerto Ricans. And so we tied it all in to what the overall effort. If you go to our past podcast, you'll see interviews with individuals, president of the Puerto Rican Bar of New York, and you go to the website, you'll see interviews with Darren Soto, Congressman Darren Soto, and we will have others in the future. So to discuss this issue in depth, and hopefully I consider it fair. I don't, I have friends who may think I'm too harsh when it comes to Puerto Rico, but I try to speak honestly. You and I have discussed this, that our purpose is always to try to speak what we believe, and if we're wrong, we're wrong. Hey, I'll correct myself. But
we're not. I'm sorry.
Bring the facts out so that
exactly. That's what I was going to say. We're not about creating stories. All 3 shows are based on facts. If the facts bothers you, well, speak up. We're here. We'll hear you. This is not a one conversation. We are not picking sides here. We are not. That the vote should be given to the Puerto Rican people. They're the ones that need to make the decision. Not me, not Tony, not the Bar Association of any state or any other bar association that gets and joins the moot court now or in the next years to come. The important thing is to clear the path. So in the case that it happened, the Puerto Rican people would have the power, to be able to have their own elections and decide what they're going to do. Otherwise, they can't do it because by themselves, they need the permission. They need permission.
Right.
All
right. Well, Steve, I want to thank you for joining me today on this broadcast and this forum, and I look forward to hearing from all of you out there. And thank you. God bless. See you next week.
All right. Take care. God bless.